We are continuing on Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, Hilchot Shabbat, and we are up to Siman Reshpeh, the very important halachot of Shnayim Mikra ve'echad Targum. Says Maran of Shulchan Aruch. This is obviously a Gemara in Masechet Brachot of Chet. Af al pi she'adam shomea kol haTorah kulah kol Shabbat betzibur, even though that you are going to publicly listen to the Torah, go over it with the Hazan on Shabbat morning as the Torah is being read, chayav likrot le'atzmo bechol shavua parashat oto hashavua shnayim mikra ve'echad targum. A person has an obligation to read the parasha, the portion of the Torah that's being read in that week, Shnayim Mikra, twice the parasha, ve'echad targum, one time the Aramaic targum, unculus, that is accompanied on the side of your chumashim, afilu atarot v'dibon, even those things that don't make a difference in the targum. Atarot v'dibon happens to be just the pasuk that the targum is identical with the pasuk itself, so you still have to do the targum in addition to twice reading of the parasha. Says the Mishna Berura, Hainu shlo yaktim likrot kodem oto shavua. You have to do it at the time that the sibur is up to this. So you don't want to do it early on. You don't want to sit one time a year and say, you know what, I'm just going to get ahead of the game. I have 2 days off. I'm going to sit and go through Shnayim Mikra ve'echad Targum of the whole year. Can't do that. You have to do it, that parasha starts really from when the sibur starts the parasha, which is Shabbat afternoon. So Shabbat afternoon, after we start reading publicly the parasha of the upcoming week, that's when you could start reading the parasha. You also don't want to be late, right? As the Gemara says, you want to read it imat tzibur, with the tzibur, and that means that you don't want to be late either, as we will see. The time would be lachatchila to do it on Friday, but certainly before the Seudah of Shabbat morning, Seudah Shniya, that is when a person should be finishing his Shnayim Mikra ve'echad Targum. Now, Shnayim Mikra ve'echad Targum, says the Chafetz Chaim, means don't do one time Mikra, one time Targum, and then have in mind that at the shul also I'm going to listen to another time. So Friday I'm going to sit and do Mikra ve'Targum, and then tomorrow morning I'm going to listen to one more Mikra and say it with the Shaliach Tzibur. That will be Shnayim Mikra ve'echad Targum. You don't want to do that. אלא צריך לקרוא 2 פעמים מקרא חוץ ממה ששמע מהשליח ציבור. You want to read it twice aside from what you hear from שליח ציבור. אם לא שקרא אז גם כן בפיו. Unless you are actually reading with the shaliach tzibur. Now, that being said, it's important to note that there is much of Kabbalistic understanding of this halacha as well. So, aside from the fact that this is a Gemara, a Rambam, a Shulchan Aruch, and it's an obligation that the person has, but Kabbalistically speaking, it has its own rules and regulations, to the degree that the Maran Chida writes, well, the way to do it is to keep the order of Shnayim Mikra ve'echad Targum. The Kaf HaChaim writes, you should do every pasuk Shnayim Mikra ve'echad Targum, and then only then move to next pasuk. That's the best way of doing it. Instead of saying, well, I'm going to do Aliyah Rishonah, and then do it again, and then do the Targum, and then go to Aliyah Shniyah. Don't do that. One pasuk, you say twice, Targum, then the next pasuk, and so on and so forth. It's important to keep it in that order, says, Kabbalistically speaking, says the Kaf HaChaim, and he says you should not even be speaking in between. So you're blocking a window of time that you're not talking. People come to you to talk. Says the Kaf HaChaim, it should not be mafsik between Shnai Mikra ve'Echad Targum either, because these are high levels of Kedusha that are accomplished, and you don't want to be dividing between them. It's not going to be mahafech, the siddur of the olamot, and higher things that are there, Kabbalistically speaking. So therefore, again, this is a separate plane of existence when it takes a life of its own, so to speak, in the world of the mystics. But nevertheless, at the very basic level, at least, some people try to do tafasta merubalo tafasta. You try to do this Kaf HaChaim, and then you end up not doing Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum. I know people who used to try to be makpid like this Kaf HaChaim, and then now for years they haven't done proper Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum because they fell off the track. It's almost like the mindset of everything all or nothing type of mindset. It's not all or nothing. Can't do that. Fine, do it once, twice, and then Targum and get it over with. You can't even do that on Friday. Do it from Sunday. Every day do Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum of that Aliyah and finish in Shabbat morning. But to make sure that you get it done, at least that to meet the requirements, the basic requirements of the Shulchan Aruch, of course, is something important, and it's key as well. Now, even a Talmid Hacham, that Torato Umanuto, he's learning, he's writing Chidushe Torah, he's very productive in his time, and every minute counts. He still has to do. This is an obligation. It's not that, let's make sure you did some Torah today. Even if you're learning Gufei Halachot and the most complex areas of Torah, you still have to pause and put time for saying Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum. Chacham Ovadia himself, who was Torah Umanuto in that sense, he writes this in his Sefer Halichot Olam, other Sefarim as well, that there's no excuses really for great Talmidei Hachamim that they are using their time very positively and very productively. Still, they would have to do that. Now, if you have safek, whether or not you have done the Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum of this week's parasha, is better to be machmir and do it. This is Rav Mazuz says this in Shelot Utshuvot Mekor Ne'eman, that if you can, try to do it anyways. Now, if a person, Rahman Litzlan, is suma, a blind individual, or someone that has an eye ache, it's like a latex surgery, and for this week he's in pain, he can't do it. So what you do is you have to listen to it, right? Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum from a person that is obligated to read it. So you go sit next to someone that's saying Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum, and you listen to it by listening Shomea Ke'oneh. So the concept of Shomea Ke'oneh is not just by brachot. Says Chacham Ovadia and Chazon Obadiahu, it could be applied to this element of halacha as well. He says this in Chazon Ovadia Shabbat in Chelek Aleph. Now, as far as ketanim are concerned, this is something that you want, hashkafically speaking, the kids to be used to doing it as a young age already. As soon as they can be handling Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum, they could do slowly but surely, start doing little by little. So the mitzvot chinuch, even though that this is a chiyuv d'Rabbanan, we paskin that chinuch, the mitzvah of chinuch, which simply understood is on the shoulder of the father to see to it that his children are keeping the mitzvot. That's even by mitzvot d'Rabbanan. It's not just that I have to train my kids to do the mitzvot d'Oraita, but I have to train my kids to do mitzvot d'Rabbanan as well. So this is no different than a regular mitzvot d'Rabbanan. You want, once the kid is bar chinuch, is the age of understanding and an age that he should be accustomed to the mitzvot, you start making them get used to doing Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum. Now, chinuch by every mitzvah is different, right? Katan ha'yodea li'itatif, Chazal say if with the age that they could wrap tzitzit, then you give them tzitzit, you buy them tzitzit. The age that they could wrap tefillin and keeping a guf naki, which means they can't let gas, that's already a much more mature age. That's when tefillin kicks in. So for this, it's simple. It's just reading skills, of course. Once they get used to reading properly, that's when you're going to give them the chinuch, the proper needed education that they should be doing. Shnai mikra v'echad targum. Now, women are patur from this mitzvah, right? It's not something that women should be concerned about, because this is part of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. In its core, even though that you could say, well, this is mitzvah that says shazman grama, shelo hazman grama, rather, of the Rabbanan, there's no time frame for it. You could do whatever you want during the week, right? But nevertheless, this is part and parcel. It's an offshoot of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Women are not chayav to Talmud Torah, aside from the mitzvah that they have to know. But if someone wants to do Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum, if a woman wants to do it, tavo alav bracha. Amazing, right? Just like any other mitzvah, that if they opt to do, they still get schar, like eno mitzuveh v'oseh, they will receive a great schar for this as well. Now, how about an avel? Avel is asur to do Talmud Torah, and this is an offshoot of Talmud Torah, right? So there are those who say that avel should not be doing Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum, because it is an offshoot of Talmud Torah. This is the opinion of many, including Rav Ben Ish Chai in his Shelot Utshuvot Rav Pe'alim. He also sides with those who say it's asur, but there are those who disagree that this is like saying Shema. The Aver says Shema, even though that Shema also is Talmud Torah. The Gemara in Masechet Menachot Daf Tzaditet seems to indicate clearly that Shema that we say is part of the minimum obligation of our Talmud Torah daily. But you say it because you're obligated to say it as part of the tefillah, even though that it's an offshoot also of Talmud Torah, you still could say it. So those others, they side with this. The Kaf HaChaim seems to say it like that. One of the Gedolei Chachmei Tunisia in his Shelot Teshuvot Shoel V'Nish'al, he paskins like that as well. And Chacham Ovadia seems to side with this in Yebia Omer also. Now, as we mentioned, the best way of doing Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum is to do it on Friday morning. Yom Shishi, do it with Tefillin D'Rabbeinu Tam. That's the elite Madrin, Min HaMadrin, that a person should be doing it in that way. But again, if a person, in the case that we have, that the Avel is getting up, for instance, from Avelut on Friday morning or on Shabbat morning, it's the last day of the Avelut, so perhaps to stay away from this whole machloket, he would do it Shabbat morning, and this way you're kind of like out of all the question, and not getting inside this whole machloket that we mentioned. Now, says the Chafetz Chaim, before we get into Rashi even, the question of Rashi, says the Mishna Berura over here, Ve'ayin b'Magen Avraham, Seif Katan Het, שכתב בשם לחם חמודות, בדיעבד יוצא פעם אחת במה ששמע מהשליח ציבור, that even listening to the shaliach tzibur, not verbalizing the words with him, but the evet counts. If you're listening to everything he's saying, and you have kavanah shomea ke'oneh, so to speak, that also is good b'di'evet. And there are those who are machmir, says the Chafetz Chaim, v'yesh achronim shemachmirin afilu b'di'evet. Fine. But the reading itself, says the Mishna Berura, it's debatable within the Achronim as well. Yesh omrim shikra kol pasuk shte pa'amim v'targum alav. There are those who say every pasuk should be read separately 2 times and then the targum afterwards. And there are those who say that you could read the whole parasha once and then twice and then the entire parasha of targum after that, and that's also fine. Every paragraph, either the open ones or the closed ones, you do every paragraph שתי פעמים ואחר כך תרגום. ומגן אברהם ושערי תשובה מסדדים כצד הראשון. מגן אברהם And Sha'arei Teshuvah say you should do every pasuk separately, twice, and then Targum, and then only then next pasuk. But the Vilna Gaon used to do the other way around. Vilna Gaon himself used to do every parasha, every paragraph in Chumash paragraph, and then do the Targum after that. Now, well, again, that would be best to do parasha, but if you do aliyah by aliyah or even the entire parasha, and then do, that's also b'di'evet yotze. This is the question of what lachatchila you should be doing. The Vilna Gaon obviously did this lachatchila even, and so on. Now, once you add it, throw in a little arizal also here. Mishu baki b'ta'amim u'benekudot ba'al peh. Someone that knows all of the proper reading as far as the proper reading, meaning the tropes, and of course the nekudot, which means the proper way that the word should be read. If a person knows all of that, tov lader likrot b'sefer Torah gufa. It's better to read it from actually the Sefer Torah, the scroll, which again this becomes something that's big. Al pi de mekubalim as well. The Ari HaKadosh used to do it in that way, and Maran Chida actually writes in our Siman in Machzik Bracha, in his Sefer Machzik Bracha, he writes B'Shem Rabbeinu David ben Zimra. The Radbaz was the one of the last Nagid of Mitzrayim. He was perhaps the last in the list of the Rishonim. He overlapped with Maran Shulchan Aruch. He lived a very blessed long life. He was for 50 years the Nagid in Mitzrayim. Then at the end of his life, in his upper 80s, came to Eretz Yisrael, and Maran gave him a lot of kavod as the Zakan HaOra'ah and the Zaken Ador. But he brings the name of the Radbaz, that if a person is baki in reading the parasha properly, then it's mitzvah min hamufchar to read the entire Shnai Mikra from a actual Sefer Torah, and then you have a Chumash next to you doing Shnai Mikra v'chatargum in that way. I still remember Rabbi Eliezer ben David, whenever he used to come to town, Fridays he was sitting next to the Aron Kodesh, open Aron Kodesh, with a Chumash, and he was doing Shnai Mikra v'chatargum like that from the actual Sefer Torah, because he was machmir for this shita in the Mishna Berura in Al Pi de Mekubalim. He didn't want to take the Sefer Torah out because that by itself is a questionable thing, but nevertheless, there is something that people do based on these shitot, not just the Mekubalim, but even Al Pi Halacha. Now, if a person has a Sefer Torah that is pasul, right? It's no longer kasher, and he wants to still keep it, not do geniza, keep it at home and use it for Shnai Mikra v'chatargum. If it's very clear that the Sefer Torah is pasul, then you can keep it at home, because then it's not, you're not going to mix it up for a kasher Sefer Torah. But again, this becomes a question of its own, when and when not a person could keep a Sefer Torah at home. So these are some of the basics of this siman, the Seif rather, and Bezat Hashem will continue some of the details of this and start Seif Bet in the next shiur. Hazaku Baruch.